Welcome back to This Week. Time now to get the views of our media and political experts. Bob Tuke is the former chair of the state Democratic Party, and Steve Gill is a syndicated conservative talk show host here in Nashville. Guys, the big news, and welcome, happened late this week on Friday when the White House announced that at least 5, maybe more, of the terror suspects being held in Guantanamo Bay are going to be brought back to New York City to be tried, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of the 9/11 terror attacks. Irony that it happens just blocks away from where the 9/11 tower stood.
Well, and I know that during Bob's lawyer career, which continues, he never had any trials that became circuses and showcases. I guarantee you this one will be. At the arraignment of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he started arguing with the judge, this was a couple of years ago, about the fact that this court had no authority over him unless it was a Sharia law court, was denouncing the Constitution, demeaning America. This is all going to be about show. These guys have all confessed to their crimes. They've all basically pled guilty and asked for the death penalty already. This is going to be all about putting their vile jihadist Muslim attitudes on parade, and the world's going to watch.
And the only thing I've got to say in addition to that, I agree with all that, is I'm just glad that they're going to be put on trial. They're going to be found guilty. Ultimately, they're going to be dealt with, executed, and it's time to get on with it because having people shunted off someplace and not dealt with, I think hurts us. I want to deal with people like this.
So I think Steve's right. There's a lot of negative, but is there a positive in that? Do the families of these victims want to see these guys on trial and see them prosecuted? Is that the one plus?
That's what I'm trying to get at. I think we need some closure here, and it's gone on way too long. I'm glad finally, when President Bush first established Guantanamo, the idea was that they were going to be housed there and then put on trial in some kind of military tribunal. It just never has happened. It's time that we get on with it and make it happen, give some closure to the families.
I agree that it ought to happen. The families, or at least most of them in New York today, are professing outrage over this trial setting in New York, in part because we don't have the security in place for these kinds of trials in our court system. And frankly, anybody involved in this court trial, whether it's the lawyers, whether it's the prosecutors, whether it's the judge or the jury, they are on a death sentence from terrorist activity for the rest of their lives. They are potential targets for them and their families, and I'm not sure that's a fair thing to do. I think it's a little easier when you have a military tribunal somewhere like Guantanamo Bay. The other thing is when we had the war crimes after Germany fell, the Nuremberg trials, we didn't trot these guys into General Sessions Court in Nashville. You have war trials for war criminals. You don't put them in the regular criminal court system.
That's going to be one of the interesting aspects when this does go to trial is, quote, finding a jury of their peers, finding 12 people who don't know enough about this. That's going to be a very difficult process.
It is, but the truth is, of course, this isn't General Sessions Court. It will be a very secure setting. They will find a jury. They will try these guys, and it just needs to happen. That we are a nation of laws, and it's time we got on with it. And I think in the long run, this is exactly what we need to do.
Also this week, the big story, 20 years ago, an event that changed the world with the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's hard to realize it's been that long ago, but it really was truly, when it happened, it changed into the Cold War. It changed the world as we know it.
It was cataclysmic, and it was such a terrific thing for President Reagan to do. And some of us Democrats, complain from time to time that he would.
It was a great speech.
It was terrific, and it was perfectly delivered, and the challenge was there, and very unexpected. And then what happened thereafter was really neat, was unexpected. Who knew what was really going to happen? And finally, when all those East Berliners got up on that wall and started hammering at it and knocking it down physically, I remember, I'll never forget the way I felt seeing that on TV.
It was an amazing thing, and again, I think it underlines peace through strength. Ronald Reagan didn't just give a great speech. They knew he would back up his words with action. Peace through strength is what helped bring that wall down. The other thing I'd add is that those East Germans that climbed the wall, this thing didn't fall. It was brought down by people willing to climb on that wall when there was still risk and say, we're bringing this thing down. That's how democracy spreads.
This week, the nation and the president went to Fort Hood to say goodbye to the 13 killed there last week. And as the process went on, as the grieving continues, and the nation did say goodbye to these brave soldiers and victims out there, we're learning more and more about Major Nidal Hasan, and none of it is good.
Bob and I were talking before the show that the more we learn about this guy, the madder both of us get. And I think the more we learn about this situation, there are a lot of issues that are going to come forth. How much did political correctness play in ignoring all the warning signals that this guy was putting out? His business card has SOA as one of his identifiers on it, Soldier of Allah. How many red flags do you have to put up before Army intelligence, the FBI, or somebody pays attention? And now we're learning increasingly that people did pay attention, but they were afraid their own careers would end because of being accused of bigotry or anti-Muslim bias, so they just let it sit. And 13 Americans are now dead.
And it's not like he was some corporal or something hiding out in some barracks. I mean, he was a psychiatrist, a major in the United States Army, subject to review. He had had some terrible reviews. And he should have been not only dismissed, but in my view, should have been discharged. Shouldn't have been in the Army at all. I don't get it. And I'm hoping that coming from this, the only good that can come from this is tightening standards and re-examining how it is people get in positions of authority, positions where they could really do harm, as he did in a different way. But he could have done harm in other ways, may have done harm in other ways. We need to make sure people like that are identified and are dealt with promptly.
Obviously, all Muslims are not terrorists, but will this incident increase the scrutiny that Bob's talking about, the background checks, the more in-depth look into people's private lives and what they are doing outside of maybe a Army setting?
I think it must.
I think it should, but it shouldn't just be limited, let's go ferret out all the Muslims. I think clearly there ought to be scrutiny if there is a religious aspect. I mean, if you had a bunch of Quakers that were blowing themselves up and killing people, we'd look at Quakers. I think we ought to take a look at the Muslims in the military, but as we talked, I think, last week, if you've got skinheads, if you've got a guy with KKK on his business card, he deserves scrutiny the same way that somebody that has Soldier of Allah on their business card.
That's exactly right. And some of the organizations related to the KKK, those kinds of skinhead kinds of organizations, are increasingly recruiting both active duty and reserve military people. And we have to be very careful so that our soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen aren't sucked into that sort of thing. We really need scrutiny here.
And we're also blind as a nation not to think that the enemies we face in this worldwide jihad will not try to infiltrate, whether it's our intelligence agencies, our congressional offices, as we've read in some recent reports, or our military. This is an enemy that is diabolical, well-planned. It is not just a bunch of nitwits in the desert that are ill-informed and illiterate. We need to recognize that we face enemies who will do anything and everything they can to bring us down, and we need to act like we're in a serious war.
Steve Gill, Bob Tuke, appreciate your insight as always. Thank you. Stay with us. This week continues in a moment.